Got someone I want you to meet.
Got someone I want you to meet.
Clifford, this is Mike.
This is Mike. Oh, Linderman. Oh, sorry, everyone. I was just watching a movie called My Bodyguard. But hey, you're not here to watch a movie with me, but you are here to participate in a conversation with a gentleman that I've known for actually quite some time, and we reconnected during COVID, and it's been wonderful. And Andrew Katz, who is our special guest here on the High Arts on the Edge page, let me give you a real brief, I guess, a synopsis of how I got to know Andrew and why I would like to have a conversation with him, with you. So when I first met Andrew back in, I believe, 1999, 2000, one of the things that really captured my attention was clearly his love for pop culture. And we found commonalities and connections through music and movies. Um, and what fascinated me was that not only could he kind of recite line for line of these obviously classic movies, Breakfast Club, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, you name it. But he could also kind of go into the deeper cuts of the movie with these random lines. And he would also remember the actors' names and so on and so forth. And that's always appealed to me because I always found that fascinating that he's taking pop culture and he's kind of incorporating into his own life. And I was figuring out, okay, what's he going to do with all this? I mean, does he play trivia games with people? Does he incorporate it in his teaching? So there's kind of like this, who is this gentleman that knows so much about things that I truly care about, and that is pop culture. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Andrew Katz to our program. Andrew, are you there?
I'm here. That was
How
quite
are
a
you
nice.
doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Did you recognize that clip that I'd
I had to be
put on?
quiet because I was off camera, but of course I knew that it was from My Bodyguard, and that's one of the things that connects the two of us. And it's kind of a good example of how you and I are connected because you mentioned Breakfast Club and Planes, Trains, and Automobiles in the intro, but I feel like those are too mainstream for what we're really talking about. I think some of the weirdness is like I took my family when we went to Chicago a few years ago. I went to find the high school where they filmed My Bodyguard, and
Oh.
I was in a lot of trouble. Like my family was really upset with me. They just thought, like, what are we doing? Why are we here? Nobody comes to this part of Chicago for a reason.
What part of Chicago is that?
It's actually it was a nice part. It was fine. I forget the actual town name, but it's in the northern part of the city, and it was a really pretty old school, and they were actually renovating it at the time, but the facade was the same. And that I'm getting a little ahead of myself for what we're going to be talking about, but those are the kind of things that I think brought me here, are those kind of weird, like you said, deep cuts or movies that I saw at a formative age over and over and over again because of how limited cable was at the time.
So, one of my most indelible memories of growing up was playing Jaws with my brothers um, on our bunk beds, and one of the brothers would be the shark, the Leviathan. And so that was kind of the planted seeds of my love for cinema and pop culture, particularly with Steven Spielberg. So tell us, when did this all start? When did this passion, this drive, this need, almost like it's part of your DNA, your love for pop culture and movies or music, whatever you want to share?
I think I don't think it's something that you know is happening at the time. And it kind of starts, I think, with sort of a somber, like kind of down, sad part of the story. And it's really, my father passed away when I was 11 years old, and my mom had just recently gotten a job right before he passed away, which was turned out to be a good thing because she was employed. But she got a job at the local cable company. This it sounds like I'm making this up, but she got a job at the cable company, and the one, she didn't get paid a lot of money or anything. It was a full-time job, and um, I was 11, my brother was 9, my sister was a little bit older, she was 14, and from that point on, almost literally, we were raised by the television, and we in our neighborhood had, I guess, the best television because we had all of the channels for free. It wasn't that it was the largest television or even the TV that had the best reception or anything, but we had all the channels. So when MTV was a really big deal, we had it. My mom would actually bring home some promotions and things from the cable companies to get you to watch certain channels. So HBO and Showtime. There was a channel called Spotlight for a little while, and they would all come and go, and we got to sort of dig into all of them. And at the time, like I said earlier, the offerings were really limited. So I watched My Bodyguard a lot. I watched the movie 9 to 5 all the time. Right. There were just some. And then, it's funny, all these years later, there was one that was on a lot early on. It was called Over the Edge. And it was Matt Dillon's.
Matt Dillon.
Yeah, Matt Dillon's, I think it was his first movie. And flash forward 30 years or more, and I'm meeting these people in this group that I'm in, and that's one of their favorite movies. And um, it's kind of interesting because for a while, because I watched it so long ago and it wasn't a big movie and it wasn't readily available, I thought, did I just dream that movie? Is that something that is real? Because I remember Matt Dillon kind of scaring me a little bit. He was a little bit older than me. He was always kind of a bully and like way too tough. I was this really soft suburban kid. I mean, that's just who I am. And he was this streetwise. He always had a gun. I don't know. It's kind of unbelievable. But he did all those movies, right? He did Tex, and he did eventually he did The Outsiders. He did, what was I don't know why I'm drawing a blank, but the one that was in Tulsa, the other Rumblefish. So
Rumblefish.
yeah, so he was one after the other. And I also, just very coincidentally, my next door neighbor kind of looked like Matt Dillon to me. Like he had that sort of, like, he was tougher than I was, and he was a little older than I was. And his older brother got even in more trouble than Matt Dillon in the movies did. So there was this kind of real thing going on. But I think that my introduction to cable TV, and also we, at the time, I mean, there were Saturday morning cartoons, and then we were sort of victims of very good advertising. So all of the toys that we ever wanted were sandwiched between all of the shows we were watching. So I grew up like really wanting certain toys that I still kind of want. I remember I never got a Merlin machine. I don't know if you remember a Merlin machine. It just had a whole bunch of these little dots and lights, but there was all these different games you could play, like a memory game and almost like a connect the dots game. I remember Simon and Speak and Spell. And then that was a big deal when E.T. came out, because he use a Speak and Spell as part of his machine to call home. And so there were some really innovative things going on with toys. There was head-to-head baseball, there was a Mattel baseball game, which I still have, the little electronic one. And then head-to-head, I thought that was incredible because two people could play at the same time. And I thought that was that's the best it's ever going to be. So I don't know. I feel like from 11 on, it was just a barrage of pop culture, movies and TV, and growing up while all of that grew up with me. And then just the parade of really bad 80s TV shows that came out. And it's kind of funny because now everything that happens now kind of makes fun of that. And we've learned from that, because if you look back at some of those shows, they're just not good. And the canned laughter and well, let's face it, there's a lot of things that haven't aged well. The misogyny and I don't know, just the promiscuity and just it's kind of fun. Like there's Love Boat is one that's on a lot that when I watch that now, it is unbelievable that was a hit show. It's so
Oh,
bad. But
I know.
but what I don't know what you call that, but when something's really terrible and you still want to watch it and you don't want to look away,
Maybe,
there has
I don't know. Maybe it's just like a train wreck that we like to watch,
yeah.
or a guilty pleasure kind of thing.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me how far we've come, but also that these things were, and also who was considered made for TV. Because if you watch Love Boat, it was maybe made for people who were a little older, because
Yeah,
it definitely leans like 50s and 60s as far as
yeah.
age. There's a lot of older people on those shows. They're, they were all under contract, because so you'll see like Donnie Most from Happy Days will be on Love Boat, and you'll see Jimmy Walker from Good Times will be on Love Boat, and you're like, oh, I guess they all knew each other. I guess they all had the same agent. So that's kind of how it happened for me. Just being raised by television, and I'm not proud of this at all. Like it's pretty terrible, but I think that I'm not alone. There's just people who had parents that worked, and you'd get home from school, and your parents wouldn't get home for a couple more hours, and you had this window of time uninterrupted to just immerse yourself in, I guess, for lack of a better term, pop culture, all the things that were coming at you. So now I guess it's TikTok and it's Instagram, but back then it was whatever's on television. And then of course, primetime TV, you had to be sitting down at the right time to watch it live, or else you missed it. There was no TiVo, and there was no reruns, weren't really a thing yet. And I know I'm speaking to I'm preaching to the choir, but that's kind of how it unfolded for me, I think.
So, when we don't have to get into great depth discussion, but tell me about your father, because I've never met him, obviously, and I don't remember you sharing too much when we first met. I don't remember what he looks like. So, what? Take us back to your relationship with your father.
Well, first of all, thanks for asking, because I don't really get a chance to talk about my dad very often. And believe it or not, it's really crazy to even say this, but next in February, it'll be 40 years since he passed away. I mean, that's a lifetime, right? So
Right.
I've lived way, way, way more than half my life without him. And he figures really prominently in everything I do still. Um, he had a really big impact on me, and it feels very dreamlike in a lot of ways. But um, uh, he was a physician. He was a pediatrician. He
Okay.
was, by all accounts, beloved by his patients and by the people who knew him. And I think a lot of the things that I do now, and the things that maybe not the things that I like, but the way that I like them. Like I get really into things. I don't want to say obsessed, but if I like something, I really like it, and then I'm like, I want more, I want more, I want more. I think I get that from him. His passion was trains. He loved
Oh,
not even toy trains. He loved real trains. So I remember when we were kids, there was this. It was 1976. I remember that because it was this, for some reason, it was a big deal, at least in certain circles. There was this thing called the Freedom Train, which was a 1976 painted locomotive that would come through your town, just pulling freight, and people who cared would go and watch it go by, and we did that. And so it sounds really weird now, but I remember that being a thing. And he had all kind of, around the house, had all kind of paraphernalia that were railroad spikes and lanterns and things that you would see at a train station. even before Pottery Barn did it and all these other companies, he had an old scroll from a subway in New York before it was digitized. It was a scroll that would show the station, and it was in the little window on the subway, and then they would move it to the next station. So after they retired certain subway cars, they would retire all that stuff. So he bought the scroll and they flattened it out and hung it on the wall. And now you can get those things at Pottery Barn and then Crate and Barrel, and it looks really cool. And I'm like, hey, I think my dad kind of invented that style way back when, because I grew up with that stuff. I loved things that are authentic, things that you can touch and feel, and I think that had an effect on maybe the things I seek out now. But he was, like I said, by all accounts, a really great person, a funny guy. I think he was quick to laugh. I think he was also really serious about being a good doctor, and he was a really kind of gentle, so kind of a small guy. Like, I'm pretty small and I'm not a tall person. He was heavy though, and I think that's ultimately why he died early. Yeah, I mean, I wish I could even expound about him even more. He's somebody I think about all the time. So thanks for asking.
Do you remember him passing? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
Visceral.
Well, he had a heart attack, and then he lived in the ICU for 2 weeks. And then I remember Mom coming into my room one morning and, telling me that he had died. And I still, like, when you're a kid, you think, oh, well, he'll get better. He didn't die. He's in the hospital. They'll make him well and he'll come back. And that didn't happen. So yeah, I wasn't in the room when it happened, but I was, I absolutely remember my mom telling me when it did. I remember that I actually did some artwork about that at one point in my college art career. I did a lot of work with numbers and those kind of memories. Like, I remember the time. Excuse me. They do like all of the official things. I actually went to Johns Hopkins and got like all of the documents that they make when you're in the hospital, and I sourced them for some information. And I did this really serious, somber artwork for a while, many years ago, just to kind of as a catharsis to kind of go through it and deal with it. And that was many years after he had passed. So it was interesting to kind of go in as an adult and rehash and investigate. It wasn't, there was no mystery to how he died, but as you hear about your dad dying as an 11-year-old and you just take everybody's word for it. And then later on, you're like, well, wait a minute, what exactly happened? What does it mean to have a heart attack? How did, your heart stops, or you have a heart attack and your heart is damaged? What's going on here? So I did all the things with like the EKG line. I did some imagery with that. It was, I think it actually bothered some people, but it was really useful for me. I think I had a show as a senior in college, and I had invited people to see the work, and I think people really liked it. It made them uncomfortable because it was so raw, and I don't think my family liked it, and I almost don't really care because it was something that meant a lot to me, and I'm really glad I did it. I probably should have talked to them before I invited them to the show about it. And I don't think it was a big deal. It wasn't like we had a falling out over it, but I think they were like, okay, like, next, let's try something else. But that was, that was 26 years ago, 27 years ago. That was a long time ago too. So, but yeah, and I guess that kind of points to how, I mean, when you bring up my dad, I think a lot of the things that I do now in my art are kind of part of that whole, let's find out, let's investigate, let's see what's authentic here. Let's find what's interesting about this. And that's kind of how I've tried to be as an artist ever since then, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And that's one of the things I've admired about you is like, and you alluded to it earlier, just the fact that when you sniff something and there's something there that you want to go deeper, Hello to Heather. Thanks for tuning in, Heather. Much appreciated. Um, it you go full throttle, and however much time that takes you on the timeline, whatever, it makes no difference. But you just go all in, and that is truly one of the things I admire about that quality. And it sounds like now I kind of get a sense of where the apple kind of fell from.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about it that way either, so that's good.
And by the way, Heather and whoever else is watching out there, if you want to throw Andy a question, you can do so, and we'll pause, and Andy will take the question right there. So, okay, so that gives me a better perspective on this when these seeds were planted for pop culture. So, another thing you and I have in common is teaching as educators. Um, when did that start to mold and take shape and metamorphosize for you as like, yeah, this is what I want to do?
Well, I think interestingly, I think it has to do with a lot with the same period in my life that we were just talking about. When my dad passed, I was 11 years old, and as most kids, even if their parents are still alive, when they're in middle school, they're going through a lot of changes and a lot of like, who am I? And everything my parents said I believe, but now all of a sudden I don't believe them, and they're not my favorite people in the world, and everything they say isn't true. And now I like my friends more than my family, and I'm trying to decide who I am. Am I funny? Am I smart? Am I a troublemaker? Like, who am I? And so that was happening, and then lay over the fact that my dad died. I was a little bit messed up, I think, or I was headed maybe for just, I don't know, trouble, and depending on who I hung out with. And my saving grace, without a doubt, is that I had some ability to draw. At least that's my teachers told me that I did. They're like, hey, you really have talent. You are really good at drawing. And I look back and I see what I did when I was in sixth grade, and it was okay. I teach sixth grade now, so I know, and it was like, okay, that's not bad. It wasn't like I was Michelangelo or anything, but I look back and I'm really thankful that people took time to cultivate uh, that in me and say, hey, look, you have something. And maybe if you work on this, you could turn it into something even better, or you could turn this into a career, or you could follow this passion in a number of ways. And so it had everything to do with my middle school art teacher. Her name's Kathy Unrath. And what's really cool about Kathy Unrath, and I always call her Miss Unrath when I see her, even though she's insisted I call her Kathy, I've been able to see her as a professional educator many times as an adult. And that's been really amazing because I've been able to tell her, hey, and she knows that she's had this effect on me and probably countless others. She ended up moving from Maryland to Missouri to teach PhD students how to be art teachers. So I didn't have her as a college educator, although I wish I had. But I had her as a middle school art teacher, and then later a sort of a colleague where we were all teachers at the same time. And that's pretty special, and that's rare. And I have some friends who had her as a mentor as well. So it's not just me. It wasn't anything special I did, but she made me feel really special. And that's huge for a teacher to not only do, but to be able to really to do it with a lot of students and to make a lot of students feel unique and special and empower them to figure out what they want to do. And so it's a little corny maybe, but that's why. I mean, I've been a middle school art teacher for 26 years now. And so people are like, middle school, like don't you want to do something else? Like, that's kind of crazy. And there are moments where it is. And I actually believe on some level that we are a little bit insane when we're in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. But you do need adults, and you do need people who care about you to help you navigate that, and to help you realize that all these issues and problems are not the end of the world, and that you will survive and you will make it past. And by 9th or 10th grade, or maybe 11th grade, you'll be fine. Everything will pan out. And and then 10 years from now, you won't care about the people that you're so worried about right now. You'll be like, oh yeah, that guy. All right. I don't care that I'm not friends with him anymore.
One of the things, and I don't even know if we've even discussed this off camera here at any time during our friendship. Um, when I taught, so I was a teacher for 21 years in the classroom, there would be moments I'd sit there and go, okay, I'm going to go in with this lesson almost absorbing the qualities of Robin Williams and Dead Poet Society. Not be him, but take that spirit and really improvise, step out of my comfort zone. So, in terms of your educational practice, the way that you approach teaching your students, are you a unconventional teacher, would you say? You kind of, I don't see you by the book, but how would you describe me? How would you describe your teaching practice?
I think I am more by the book. I'm not unconventional really at all. And I think part of that is, I think my goal is to have the students make unconventional artwork and take creative risks. But I think I have to create a safe space for them to do that. And if I'm always kind of joking around, or being too light about things, I think that might send the wrong message, because I want them to be thoughtful artists. I want them to be in my class and take the lesson seriously, so that they can, what I call them challenges instead of assignments, and their artwork is the solution to the challenge. When I was in college, they had this really wonderful way of us developing lessons, and they called it shaping elegant problems, which I really liked a lot, because the idea was, if you create a really elegant lesson and an elegant problem for students to solve, they'll make incredible artwork. Well, I didn't really love the word problem because it sounded sort of negative, so I just switched it to challenges. But it's the same idea. And I'm kind of self-deprecating, I think, in the art classroom. I am pretty conventional, I think. And I would probably be described as serious, or too serious sometimes, because I really want them to be the light in the room. I think I want them to be able to shine. And I think one of my strengths, if I have one, is I like to model artistic behaviors. And that was another thing that I heard a lot in college and since. And I look for, if I'm looking at other teachers, I'm like, what are you modeling? And so I bring in my own artwork, and I will do the assignment along with them, the challenge along with them, and I will show them my solution. And sometimes, if it's a sculpture, like I'm not much of a clay sculptor, that's not my forte. So I will tell them that. I'm like, I love doing this because I don't know a lot about it, and I'm going to learn right along with you. And I think as a result, they see that there's not one right way to do things, and that I'm not some expert that they have to emulate. But at the same time, what I'm trying to model is the attempt, and the figuring things out, and the investigation of how to try something new or do something different. I always tell them, I'm like, there's a part, like I might say, we're going to do handmade books, and I will show them step by step how to do it. And then I'll say, but I don't want you to just do what I just did. Like, there's like a million other ways to do it. I'm showing you one way. What other ways are there to do it? So if I'm joking around, I can joke around, and I will throw out lots of movie quotes. But as I get older, more and more of those fall on deaf ears. Like I might do a whole line or a whole like paragraph from a movie in character, and they just think that's me. They don't say, hey, I know that one. That's from, Tommy Boy or whatever. They're all, because I'll say, oh, you remember that? And they're like, no, we were born in 2012. Oh, that's right. I forgot. Like the 80s that's like, that's ancient history. 90s are ancient history for them.
How do you want to improve as a teacher? What are some areas?
Man, not only do I ask myself that all the time, but we're always being asked that. If you're in a school that cares about who's teaching the kids, they're always asking you to improve. So there's all kinds of DEIJ work that we're doing right now: diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, and that's super important. I don't know if that's just me. I think that's everybody. We're sort of just being asked to look at things through a different lens. As a white male, my lens is narrow, so I have to consistently try my best to look at things from other people's point of view, and to introduce ideas and concepts and lessons that are not just from old white dead men, and really think about. And I think art personally is one of the best places to have a very diverse education, because there's so much to pull from. It would be, and I'm just the messenger, so I'm trying to diminish my role as the messenger, and really hold up examples from all over the place. There's not enough time to introduce everything. But how would I improve as a teacher? I mean, I wish man, that's a good one. I think a lot of times I would like to connect with other teachers more and have sort of a discourse on and maybe invite other teachers in, so that they can be a fresh set of eyes and tell me what I'm doing well and what I need to work on. Because after 26 years, if you don't have somebody coming in very often, I'm sure a lot of things I do are either bad habits, and maybe they're good habits, but they're habits, and they're things that you just do because you're used to it. So I guess I would try to stay fresh is one thing. Try new things, practice what I preach. Don't do things the same way every time. Don't do the same lesson every year. Try something new. And I've been able to do that on occasion. Like, I'll really shake things up and just do away with a lesson and say, I want to try something totally different. And those end up being some of my favorite lessons too.
So with your experience as an educator, when did you start seeking out, okay, this is my livelihood, this is my profession that I'm really immersed in? When did you start doing some of these side paintings? Because I remember when I first met you, you were doing sports paintings. I remember Rod Carew, I think Cal Ripken, some of these legendary, iconic figures. And I think you were at the early infant stages of this. So tell us a little about your love for painting and how you kind of got started with all that.
Well, I've always drawn and painted, and it's never been a time I can really remember when I didn't. And then what I drew and painted, I always had seemingly I always had like a foot in sports. I always loved baseball, so I was always painting my favorite baseball players and athletes, and that goes way back. Like, I could find pictures from when I was 9 or 10 years old, and it's pictures. I found one from the 1981 World Series where I drew the Yankees and the Dodgers playing. It's on like manila paper, and it's all torn. But I was like, I've been doing this for a long time. And so it was when I moved over to the Eastern Shore of Maryland. It's real nautical around here. There's birds and boats and ships and beaches, and so I shifted a little bit, and I kept honing my craft as a watercolor artist. Painted a lot of boats and crabs and things like that. But I kept going back to sports, and you probably know this story, but not everybody else does. I would also go to Cooperstown, New York, to the Baseball Hall of Fame each year with my friends, and we kind of made a pact when we were young and we didn't have significant others and families. We're like, let's go every year, and so more or less we've done that every year. We go up and we get a campsite and we put up a tent and we go into town. We see all of the festivities and we go back to the tent and sleep. But I started bringing up artwork to show the Hall of Famers. So I would say, all right, who's going to be up there this year? And I would do a painting and I'd bring it up. So this sort of idea of a mission kind of started happening where I'm like, I got this picture of Johnny Bench and I'm going to go up and Johnny Bench is there. But the thing that I never really liked is that you have to pay for autographs. I never really liked that. I get it because there's a lot of people that can make a lot of money off that. And there's people who are willing to pay it. So that's a whole other thing. But never really liked it, but I'd get in line and I'd pay my money because I'm like, this is different. This is a one-of-a-kind painting and I'm having them write directly on it. And there was something really magical about that and kind of having that interaction. It wasn't just a ball or a photograph. So I don't know if you knew the answer to this question, but what happened is I was in line to meet Rod Carew, and in Baltimore, and I forget. Let's see. I guess it was 2012. I think it was in August of 2012, and Adam Yauch had passed away. MCA from the Beastie Boys had passed away in May of that year, and in fact, it was just the 10-year anniversary the other day of him passing away. And during that summer, I painted Rod Carew, and I was going to meet Rod Carew, and I got in line to meet him. He was at the Baltimore Convention Center, so I was there instead of up in Cooperstown, and I was in line to meet him, and I had this epiphany, and I thought, wouldn't it be really cool to kind of merge the things that I love, because there's a great song and a great line in a Beastie Boys song where do you know the story?
I know it's coming.
So there's a line in the song Sure Shot where they say, I got more action than my man John Woo, and I got mad hits like I was Rod Carew. And so I was in line and I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to go up to Rod Carew and say, would you sign I've got mad hits like I was Rod Carew on my painting? So I wrote it down because I thought I'd mess it up. So I just wrote it down. I'm like, wait a minute. I can't get him to write I've got mad hits like I was Rod Carew because he is Rod Carew. So what would he write? He would write I've got mad hits, Rod Carew. So that's what I asked him to write. And I went up there and I crossed my fingers and I was like, hey, it's really nice to meet you. Would you sign this lyric on my painting? And he goes, oh, you too? And I was like, he goes, yeah, somebody just had me sign an album cover. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. And then he goes, they actually wanted me to be on Saturday Night Live when they sang that song. They invited me to the show. He goes, but I was still playing and I was on the road. I couldn't go to the show. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And so he wrote it, and it's one of my most prized possessions. He wrote, I've got mad hits, Rod Carew. It's one of my favorite little paintings. And then I took a picture of it standing there in the Baltimore Convention Center. And I actually had this feeling like, oh man, like this is something I want to pursue. I have to go find Mike D now and get him to sign this painting too, because he's the one who says the line in the song.
Right.
So I got home and I said to Lisa, my wife, I said, I know what I'm going to do. I know what I have to do. It was like in a movie. I have to find Mike D. And she's like, well, how are you going to do that? Yauch died and they're not performing anymore. How are you going to find Mike D? And I was like, I don't know. There's got to be, he's going to come out of hiding sometime. So I was online this every once in a while, and I finally saw this thing, and it said Mike D is going to be a guest DJ at a foodie event in Williamsburg, Brooklyn on September 28th. And I triumphantly showed Lisa, I was like, I'm going to Brooklyn on September 28th to go find Mike D. And she's like, well, that's a school night, like it's a Sunday night, you're going to drive to Brooklyn. You don't even know where you're going. I'm like, this sounds really good to me. I'm doing this. And so really long story short, that is exactly what happened. I drove to Brooklyn. And I was worried the whole time because I had this big folder with me with my artwork in it. I didn't think they'd let me in, post 9/11 New York, and I'm walking into this this area, like fenced area with a big folder. I don't know what they thought or what I thought they would think, but I thought I was going to be hassled, and they let me in. Everybody who got there went directly to get in line for food, and I went over to like the music tent to stand and wait for Mike D to show up. And I noticed this guy setting up like DJ equipment, and then this woman with a clipboard comes over to me and she's like, "Can I help you?" And I was like, "Well, I'm just here to listen to Mike D's DJ set, and I have a painting I want to show him." And she said, "Are you his friend?" And I'm like, "No, not exactly." I said, "I'm just a fan." And she's like, "Well, if you stand right here, you'll probably get a chance to meet him." And I thought, that's weird. Like, why would she be so friendly about it? And then I realized that the guy setting up the DJ equipment was Mike D, and he was standing right there. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, nobody cares but me." And then I look around, and there's like 10 other people who are there for Mike D, and everyone else is like hundreds and maybe thousands of other people are in line for food. And there's 10 of us that are like, "Hey, that's Mike D from the Beastie Boys." Those people that were standing there are friends of mine now because Mike Kearney, I looked up, he's standing next to me. He's got this hat on that says MCA Day. He invented MCA Day a couple of weeks after MCA died. And he had a kind of an impromptu celebration of his life in Union Square Park, and it made it onto the news, and it made it onto the internet. And I was really mad because I heard about it the day after it happened, and if I had heard about it the day before it happened, I would have gone up. But I was like, "Hey, I know you, and you're the MCA Day guy," and he's become like a really good friend of mine. He's a very close friend now. We put on subsequent MCA Days together. And I pulled the painting out, and everyone's like, "Hey, I've seen that. Did you post that online?" And I was like, this is incredible." And then this big security guard comes over and he's like, "Can I help you guys?" And we're like, "Well, we're just waiting to talk to Mike." And he goes, "Well, he might go to the green room right when he's done, but if you stand here, you should be okay." I thought, that's weird. And then Mike D's set was 20 minutes max, real short. I for some reason, the one song I remember him playing was Johnny Too Bad by the Slickers, which I thought was a really cool choice. And then he, instead of walking over to the green room, he finished up and he walked right over to us. He goes, "Hey, what's up, guys?" And I showed him the painting, and I said, "Hey, I did this painting of Rod Carew, and he wrote, your lyrics on there." And he goes, "What?" He goes, and he was cool with that. And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, what do you want me to do?" I was like, "Well, you put your name on it too." And he did. He wrote Mike D, Beastie Boys, and then he posed for pictures with a bunch of us. But it's really amazing. I wrote a little blog post about it later, but looking back on it, that sort of sequence of the Rod Carew meeting and the Mike D meeting and Yauk passing away and meeting those people that night, it changed the trajectory of my life. I mean, it's just true. The things that I've done since then that were related to hip hop and the Beastie Boys and traveling and going to New York, these things have all kind of snowballed since then. And I can point back to those moments in time where I'm like, I'm going to do this. This feels right. I'm going to try this. And that's not always how I've done things. I'm a pretty careful, calculated person. And I found that as I've gotten older, when I take bigger chances and try things, that really memorable and incredible things happen.
Man, that Mike D story I had not heard of, the Rod Carew, and just so classic, just so beautiful. So let's talk about, okay, so I want to move into this. So you have your artwork, you have your nautical stuff, your crabscapes, your athletes. Tell us about something else that has emerged, and this what you shared with me last year regarding your love for hip hop. I've known it's always been there, but now you kind of take it to a whole new level, and you put out this documentary with a friend of yours, and I posted on the page earlier for people to see. And that documentary, what, 16 minutes long?
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah, tell us about that and kind of the adventures you've had with this whole new experience.
Yeah, well, it's all related. It really is. So if I could go back a little bit, MCA Day, meeting Mike Kearney after I met Mike D, got involved with heavily with celebrating Adam Yauch for MCA Day. I got involved in putting on this event. None of us live in New York, but we would descend on Brooklyn, and we put on this party, this celebration, and it was incredibly important every year to make it free. We never charged anybody any money. We made posters, and we got really special guests. DMC was there, Chuck D was there, Santa
Oh,
Gold, Danny Boy O'Connor, DJ Hurricane. They all came out free of charge to celebrate Adam Yauch and the photographer Glenn Friedman, and it was really amazing. And we did it from 2013 to 2017. Mike had the sort of unofficial first one by himself in Union Square Park, and then the subsequent ones were in Brooklyn, not far from where Adam Yauch Park is, and that's been named for him. So I bring all this up because Danny Boy O'Connor from House of Pain was a really big Beastie Boys fan. He sort of proudly and almost embarrassingly says, "Hey, I got kicked off of that tour." He was like, because we were too wild for those guys. But he also is very honest about, like, hey, I wanted to be a Beastie Boy. Like those guys, we're fans of those guys. And so he came out to celebrate Yauch at least twice in those first couple of years that we did the event. And he brought with him, he's a pretty notable guy in those circles. So a lot of people would show up to say hi. They knew him from the old days, and people who wanted to meet him. So he would be there, and he had with him like this I don't know, it was like a posse of people, and they were called like the Delta Bravo Urban Exploration Team. And I was like, what is this? And they all said, hey, we're going to go over after this event, and we're going to go see where Yauch went to high school. We're going to go to his high school. I'm like, that sounds cool. And I was a little envious because I wasn't invited. And then they were like, we're going to go see the where they filmed the Hold It Now, Hit It video. And Ricky Powell, the photographer, is going to be there, and he's going to show us exactly where they did it because they used his fisheye lens. I'm like, wow, that sounds really cool. And I was not invited. And so I was sort of living vicariously through them and Facebook, because they would post all of these adventures. And then they would say, well, we did these things and we matched them up. Like, we'll do a side by side where there's a picture of what it looks like now and a picture of what it looks like then. And I was like, you know what? I've done this for a long time. I've done this on my own with my pictures of my dad, where he grew up in Brooklyn. And I had gone to Brooklyn in 2004 to find out where he lived. And I grew up reading these Time Life books that my parents had, these really great monograph pictorials of like the best life photographs of all time. And I'll never forget, there's this one sequence of pictures of a man and his baby daughter on a beach, and he's probably in his early 20s. And they go back every year and they take the same picture, and he's holding the baby in the first 5, and then she's a young girl, and then eventually at the end of the picture, she's like in her 50s and he's old. And that had a profound effect on me. And I thought, that's what they're doing, right? They're going to the same place, and we're seeing how things have evolved and changed. And I don't know what you call that either, but I was like completely hooked. I'm like, I want to do that. I want to go to places in Maryland where I live, or DC where I live, and show them, hey, this was in that movie, and this was that album cover. So I started sort of sheepishly joining the group and taking my own pictures and sending them in. And it's all free. It's just a Facebook group. But people were like, whoa, this is really cool. Where was this? And, you have to give an address, and you have to put the logo on. And, if you want to make sure that you're doing it right, they have a little bit of a standard, which I love. There's other groups that do this, and it's cool. Some of the other groups, they don't tell you where it is in the world. And I find that frustrating, because I'm like, tell me, like, I want to go visit. I want to go there too. And there's also some people that are like, well, you didn't hit this first. I'm like, I'm probably the 100th person, but it was amazing when I was there. I stood right there. I mean, and if you go to DC, it's like that everywhere you go, because there's all kinds of history with politics and famous people in DC. But any city really, right? Especially, go up and down the East Coast, you got Philly and you got Boston and you got New York. There's just a ton of places to go. And so I would go down to Georgia. We would go to Savannah. And of course, there's a ton of Forrest Gump things that you can then hit down there. And I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because I know you were asking about the documentary, but this is all backstory, because what ultimately happened is I got super, I don't want to say obsessed, but I got really involved. I just, everywhere I would go, we would, like, if Lisa was traveling, she's like, oh, I have a conference to go to out in Salt Lake City. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I'll tag along. And I would be on the plane going, all right, what movies were filmed in Salt Lake City? Oh, The Sandlot was filmed in Salt Lake City? Really? Okay. So what, she's at her conference all day and I'm running around in the rental car going, hey, this is the field where The Sandlot happened. This is where Smalls lived. And this is where Benny the Jet Rodriguez lived. And I found all that. And then this was amazing. Footloose was filmed in Utah, and I had no idea. And I'm looking at a map, and of course, all of this is made possible because of Google Maps and the internet. And I'm like, okay, Payson, Utah. It's 40 minutes from here. And so I said to Lisa, I'm like, do you want to drive to Payson? She goes, okay. so we did. I mean, because Footloose, that was that's right there, 1984. I was 12 or 13. And you talk about pop culture. We drive into town. I'm like, if everything's the same, this is going to be really cool. So we drive in, and there's the high school, and it's exactly the same. And of course, I had to put on Mental Health by Quiet Riot as I drove into the parking lot, just like with that playing. So I was driving around listening to Mental Health. I'm like, this is awesome. And then I noticed that the door of the building, it's middle of the summer, so there's no students there. The door is propped open with a trash can. And I was like, oh, I'm not supposed to go in schools, but maybe there's some kind of a workshop or something here today. So we poke our heads in, we walk in, and sure enough, we see where the lockers, where they did where they had the headphones on, and he's teaching them to dance to Let's Hear It for the Boy. And just, it was all there. And when he tells, I don't know how familiar you are with Footloose, but when he tells the story about the nightclub in Chicago, and Willard is listening to him and he can't believe how cool Chicago sounds. That cafeteria looks exactly the same. It was unbelievable. And then we went and saw the mill where he's throwing the bags of flour down, and that's exactly the same. We saw where they had the chicken race with tractors. It was incredible. Anyway, I could go off on all that, but my whole point is that no matter where we go, I went to San Francisco and we found all kinds of cool scenes from Bullet, Steve McQueen movie. And so a couple years later, I'm just getting into this whole idea of trying to do these things on my own. So I challenged myself. I'm like, I always wanted to go to Hollis, Queens, and see where Run DMC got their start. And I know that might sound odd to some people, but growing up and seeing images in magazines and posters, and you see these backgrounds, you're like, where is this in the world? And they would talk about 25th Street, and I'm like, where is that? So I got a couple of Glenn Friedman books, and he was somebody who photographed Run DMC early on, and Jeanette Beckman, she also photographed them in front of the houses where on the streets where they lived. And I said, I went to a Run DMC Facebook page and I threw down the gauntlet just to make sure I would really do it. And I'm like, I'm going to Hollis this summer and I'm going to go find all of these spots. And people were like, cool, and thumbs up and all that. And a friend of mine who's part of the same group, Nick Light, who I know through MCA Day and the Beastie Boys stuff, is like, hey, Andy, give me a couple days heads up and I'll meet you there. I'm like, awesome, that would be great. So little did I know that Nick lives in Vancouver, Canada. That's not near Hollis, Queens. But I told him on a Monday, I'm like, I think I'm going to go on Wednesday. I'm going to go. I'll meet you in front of the Jam Master Jay mural on 205th and Hollis. And he's like, I'll be there. And he was on Wednesday. He met me there, and he had picked up his cameraman friend, Frank, on the way. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, well, we're going to just film you doing whatever you do. And I was like, I'm not like a camera ready kind of person. I'm glad you're along, but I don't need to be on film. And he's like, yeah, just do what you do, and we'll just follow you around. And tell us what you see, and we'll just capture it all. So we did that for and I went in so prepared. I had everything mapped out. I knew exactly where I was going because I looked on Google Maps first, and I dropped all the pins. So as I'm walking around, I keep looking over my shoulder at them. I'm like, this is it. This is the building, and this is the garage door that they're leaning against. And oh my gosh, we found it. And 7 or 8 hours of that, they distilled it down to about, like you said, 16 or 17 minutes. And it's a mini documentary. And it's the coolest thing I've ever done in my life. And I didn't even do it. I just did what I normally do, and they videoed all of it. And so it was this little, just having it as a tangible thing now is one of my favorite things ever. Just being able to go, oh my gosh, I was part of this little thing. And what was cool is that about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, the whole thing has sort of been rekindled, where the idea is that maybe we do more of these for other bands or other places or other sites. And we wanted to make sure we had Danny Boy's blessing. So we got him on the phone, and we asked him how he felt about all of this, because we didn't want to sort of proceed. And his advice was, this is great, go for it. He's like, but don't say you've discovered things that have already been discovered. And I was like, yeah, that's good advice, because we're not really discovering anything. You're just seeing us discover it for ourselves. And there's something really great about that. I think where you run into trouble is like, look what I found, and no one has ever seen this before, and I'm not going to tell you where it is. It's like, this is somebody's neighborhood. This is somebody's every day. And I don't know. It's been really amazing to kind of think about what we can do with this next. I could see us doing like a little series of these short documentaries, or turning it into some kind of a show. I was told, though, like, we need a host that's maybe a little more camera ready or better looking than me. So they're like, yeah, Andy, maybe you should think about like getting somebody younger and a little more hip. Like, all right, you're not going to get an argument from me.
By the way, Mario's, I'm assuming when talking about your Rod Carew story, I think he said that was a great story. Heather said, so true. Chris says hello, Chris Gardner. And then Heather says, love the Sandlot. You're killing me, Smalls.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, when you go to these places, and I'm not allowed to go to Savannah with my family anymore, because I talk like Forrest Gump the whole time I'm there. And they're like, it's one of the funniest parts, though, because they're all, my family is not impressed by any of this. They're all like, oh man, here we go again. So I'm like, oh, like, you go to Chippewa Square. Everybody goes to Chippewa Square because that's where he sits on the bench and says life is like a box of chocolates. Well, the bench isn't there. It was put in there for the movie, and it's not there anymore. And I think it's at the Smithsonian now. But at the time when we were there last, or when I was there last, when they still let me come to that city, it was at the Savannah Historical Society. So we walked over there because we heard it was there. We walked in, and I brought up the clip on YouTube. I brought up the clip of Forrest Gump sitting on the bench and talking about life is like a box of chocolates. And so I'm showing this to my daughter, and I'm just loving it, because there's the bench, and I'm playing it live for her. And this other family comes up, and their eyes are all big, and they're like, I hear it. I hear the scene. Like, this is and so whenever stuff like that happens, it's awesome, because I was cracking up, and Lisa's like shaking her head, walking away embarrassed. But I love that. I think that's always amazing. And gosh, I've been going up to New York a lot lately, and when I go, I make sure I do a lot of research for it first. So I guess it was for spring break, or it was our midwinter break in February. I went up to New York to drop off some artwork, and I had never really been to Harlem or the Bronx, and I had to go to both of those places to drop off some of my artwork. So I did some research, and I wanted to find where 1520 Sedgwick is, which is where the birthplace of hip hop, where they had the original, where Kool Herc and his sister had their party in 1973, and it's widely accepted that that is when hip hop started. And I drove there and I stood out front and took my picture, and I've been to the birthplace. And on the way, I stopped at I found this. If you're familiar with The Godfather, where Carlo gets beaten up by Sonny in the street. That scene, I think it's 118th Street in Harlem, and the building. He's sitting on the stoop. He's wearing an orange suit, which I think is symbolic. I think every time we see orange in those movies, somebody's about to get hurt or killed. And he's wearing an orange suit, and Sonny gets out and chases him down and beats him up and bites his hand and all of that. That's all there, you know. I mean, some of the wrought iron is gone, but I was like, this is where that happened. And then, you know, 3 blocks from there, and this was really important for me to see, was the Keith Haring Crack is Whack mural, which is an old handball court, and he had painted it in the 80s, and then they've recently refurbished it. Well, I ended up going there. But so when I go there, I don't just visit. I take the picture and I match it up with the old picture. And there seems to be, I don't know, I feel like there's an art to that. I feel like I have the same feeling when I do one of those as I do when I do a painting. Like, when it really matches up and you've done the research, and it's just cool.
I care about that stuff. I don't do what you do, but I care about it. So if I'm in San Francisco, or if I'm in down in LA, I went to go see where they filmed the famous Heat scene between De Niro and Pacino, and I'm like, I'm just a booth away, and I'm reliving that scene in my head.
Yeah.
So what is it about that experience? Why does it speak to you so much? Because you said, yeah, your family kind of teases you. Oh, here goes dad again.
Yeah.
What does it give you?
It's intangible, I think. I don't know the roots of the word nostalgia. I should probably research it, but I think nostalgia is, if I understand it correctly, at least how I use it, is a word that describes like a really thick feeling of memory and connection, and almost maybe even like deja vu. And so when I've actually likened it to time travel. I say it in the documentary when I'm standing on the steps, and I know that Run DMC were standing on those same steps, and it's 35 years later or whatever it is, and I'm like, it's neat when some things have changed a little bit or some things haven't changed at all. It's disappointing when there's nothing left and you kind of, well, there was a building here. That's not nearly as cool as you're like, this is the exact step they were standing on, and their shadow was cast across this wall the same way my shadow is cast across that wall. I don't know what you call that. But it's a feeling, and I will often stand and then I will look at my own feet and I will look at the pavement and I'll look at my surroundings and go, I'm in exactly the same spot. And I don't know why that means anything to me, but it does. And I'm like, oh, I'm right where the cameraman was, or I'm exactly where they shot this. This is the exact angle. This is what they saw when they filmed this movie. And there's so many examples, because it's not just movies. It's movies, it's album covers, it's famous things, it's historic events. There's some that are I mean, there's a guy in our group, Jimmy Ferrari, who some of his favorite things to do is to run down mob hits. So he'll find where famous gangsters were killed. And he's had some pretty incredible adventures trying to get the right perspective. Like this one guy got killed in his own back garden, in a row home. So the news photo was taken from the rooftop looking down on the dead body in the backyard. So what did Jimmy do? He asked for access to the rooftop. And he's like, it was raining, and the people were like, what are you doing? And I was like leaning out, and if I had fallen, it would have been ridiculous. And he's like, and I got the shot. And it's like, it's just fun. And like going up to New York, everything is sort of famous. So you go to Central Park and there's just hundreds of album covers and moments that have been captured there. There's a picture I got last time I was there of Genesis. They're sitting on a rock. The whole band is sitting on a rock with the buildings behind them. And I went and I'm like, well, how am I going to find the right rock? And I went and I lined up the buildings and I looked down in front of me and there's one big boulder and there's no other rocks. I'm like, that's where they were sitting in 1973 or whenever it was. It's just, I don't know. And not everybody understands, that's for sure. So when you ask me, what is it about it? It's a feeling. It's that nostalgia. One of my favorite movies of all time is Almost Famous. I love Almost Famous. And my daughter really likes it too. My daughter's 18 now, and she loves that movie too. And she and I agree that one of the reasons that it's so great is that it somehow makes us feel like that's our memory. When neither of us were alive then. Well, I was probably alive, but I was maybe not. It was supposed to be 19. Yeah, I was alive, but I was a baby.
Yeah.
But when a movie can make you feel nostalgia for an era that you were not a part of, that's really awesome. And I think that photography does that, and travel to a place that you've read about or heard about in a book, or there you can create your own nostalgia for a place, and you can connect to a place the more you know about it. And so movies and photos and those kinds of things, they all overlap. So my favorite music and my favorite movies and my favorite trips, they're all intertwined. Like I'll make this is a little bit embarrassing, but I do it every time now. I'm on the Jersey Turnpike on my way up to New York, and like I said, I've been driving up there a lot lately. Every time I get to the top of the Jersey Turnpike, where all of the big like oil drums are that say "Drive safely" on it, I will play the theme to The Sopranos. What is it? A Blue Moon in Your Eye. That song. Woke up this morning, got my yeah, and it's awesome because I'll play it. I'm like, this, you're driving it, and it's like you're part of the credits. You look around, and if you're watching the credits at the beginning of that show, that's what they're showing you. The only thing that's different is there's no toll plazas anymore. There used to be toll plazas, so I should probably get a big cigar and throw my change into the basket. But it's all part of it, It's fun, and it's. I mean, if Lisa's with me, she's shaking her head. She's like, "What? Why are we listening to this song?" Like, this is amazing. And of course, like I'll make a playlist for my trip to Queens and my trip to Brooklyn and my trip. So it's going back to music, which I'm sure you probably want me to do at some point. It's all connected for me.
So I'm going to actually, speaking of music, I'm going to grab something over here, but Mario put in something. Did you see what he wrote?
No, I don't know if I have access to what they write. Where would I see it?
It should be under the comment. You should be able to.
Oh, I see it now. I had to click on comments. Oh, there it is. That's nice. I would have loved to have seen that. Sorry. That's cool. So Mario, are you talking about the Outsiders comment?
Yeah. So do you want to tell Mario your Outsiders, Matt Dillon?
So Mario wrote The Outsiders' home is still in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and so is the drive-in theater. And come on down. And one of my goals is to go to Tulsa because, and Mario, you might know this, but Danny Boy O'Connor from the House of Pain owns that house now. He bought it and turned it into a museum because he loved the movie so much. And he's the one who started Delta Bravo, which is the group I'm talking about when I talk about the movie and the photograph mashups that I do. So there's a lot of overlap there. Danny Boy and my story about MCA Day and mashing up these pictures. So Danny is basically found the Outsiders house because he used to tour the world with House of Pain and La Coca Nostra, and he ended up finding the house in disrepair and going, oh, it's a shame, it's kind of falling apart. Ended up buying it and turning it into a museum. And I think he lives in the Mayo Hotel in Tulsa now, and full time. So it's all part of the same story, actually. What you got there?
Heather says, I feel like that about the movie Ever After. Is that the one with Drew
Drew
Barrymore?
Barrymore, I think. Drew Barrymore. Yeah, it's kind of like a fairy tale type movie.
Then she says, I would love to visit New York in the fall because of the movie You've Got Mail.
Yeah, and like When Harry Met Sally, and there's so many. Yeah, I should. You know what? One time I should do. I should have like put it up on the screen at some point. I have my Google Maps map of New York. If you zoom in on it, I have all of my pins in places that I either want to visit or I still or that I have visited. So it's a little green flag for want to visit, and I label it, and I put a little yellow star if I've actually been there. And I think I'm on thousands of them now. It's kind of amazing to see the map now. I'm really proud of it.
So, okay, so she says yes, the one with Drew Barrymore. I'm going to hold up some records here, and I just want you to quickly, and then after you tell us, yes, you've done something with this, blah, 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 I want you to share with us some of the music that that inspires you, that you love, that you embrace, blah, blah, blah. So here's my first. Have you done any exploration for this movie?
Oh, no, I haven't. And is that all LA?
A lot of it's LA, yes.
Right, so here's my big confession.
Philly. I think Philly.
I've never been to LA in my life. And so I've already started dropping pins and planning a visit. And I was going to go out for spring break, but a couple of people who went out there recently kind of warned me against it. They're like, hey, you know how you travel all over New York and you just walk all day long and you find everything you want to find in one day? He goes, it's not going to happen in LA. It takes too long to get anywhere. You'll get one spot and then you'll have to go, 3 hours to get to the next spot.
Well, and as he says in Clueless, Cher, it takes 20 minutes to get anywhere in LA.
Yeah. And so I have a couple of bucket list spots that I want to do in LA. Not necessarily from True Romance, but if there's Philly spots in there, maybe I can find some. But I really want to go to Jack Horner's house from Boogie Nights because I found that on a map. I know where it is. I want to go to G-Sun's studio in Outwater Village where the Beastie Boys recorded Check Your Head, which is my favorite Beastie Boys album. There's a ton. I mean, there's thousands of places I want to visit in LA. It's probably just like New York in that, oh, She's Having a Baby. I actually have done a mashup from She's Having a Baby. I didn't go to their house, but I was at I think it's called the Field Museum in Chicago, where he's sitting at the edge of the fountain where I guess it's kind of like a dream girl, like
yeah.
And she meets him on the edge of the fountain. And then there's the mammoth sculpture or the mammoth bones behind them. That's all in Chicago. I love that movie and I love that soundtrack. That's a great soundtrack.
Oh, it's incredible. You've got Dave Wakeling, you've got Gene Loves Jezebel, you've got Brian Ferry, Everything But the Girl, and John Hughes. He's well known for the backdrop is Chicago.
That one, you know what? That's kind of a slept on John Hughes movie because
it is.
The other ones are more like, well, maybe it's because the other ones were aimed at teenagers and that one's not. And it's a little darker too. I mean, it's really with the Alec Baldwin character kind of being his like devil on his shoulder, like, is this really what you want? And that was a good movie. That was a really good movie and a great soundtrack.
Don't get me started on quoting that movie. All right, let's do this one. So this one was one of my favorites. My brother, again, this is all connected with my brother growing up. Scared the crap out of me.
Oh yeah. Well, that's all out in California too, right?
Yes.
I haven't mashed any of it up, but yeah, that movie, I remember that one squarely being in the early cable, like it was always on. always
Yes.
on. I'm just that tennis ball scene where the gel and stuff is coming out of the ceiling, and
I got one.
I still don't really understand that, but yeah, it really scared me. The whole and the little girl, and then she didn't live very long in real life either, which I think almost adds to
No, the whole documentary on that, and
yeah.
it's grisly. The whole cast went to hell and back with that.
Well, right, because the Dominique Dunn was also murdered, right? The girl, the teenage daughter. That's right. Oh man, that was a scary movie. Somebody just posted, very coincidentally, someone just posted a picture that they had mashed up from the very end of the movie when they're checking into the Holiday Inn. They were on the second floor of like a Holiday Inn, and somebody was outside of the same room. Yeah, yeah.
All right. One of my favorite Peter Weir movies.
Now, was that filmed? Was that actually filmed in Pennsylvania, where most of the Pennsylvania Dutch live? Because
I believe so. Yeah. So have you done any?
that's probably not too far, and that's that's really what's really fun is I have a friend, Rand Belche, and he has an Instagram called Nerd Locations, and I've talked to him about. I've been on his podcast too, where he loves this stuff. He travels all over, and for his work, I guess he's always in a different city, so he's been able to go deep in some places. And this past summer, he just randomly, he's like, "Where is this?" And he sent me a picture of Muhammad Ali wearing a bowler hat, and he had a cane, and he was in a tuxedo walking down a city street. And it's such a cool challenge because you're like, I have to find this. So you spend an afternoon, you're online, and you're like, all right, where does that look like? That looks okay, maybe like 48th Street in Manhattan. And so you get on Google Maps and you start driving around, and you're like, that's it. And so I think it was 20 minutes later, I'm like, I found it. He was like right outside of Rockefeller Center, and he was walking right by this building you can see. And then the next time I went to New York, I mashed it up appropriately and sent it to him. And it's so gratifying to be able to be like, I nailed it, I got it, you
know. Before we do our music trivia and soundtrack trivia, can you tell us some of the albums that you're listening to right now, or anything that you want to share with regards to albums that you love?
Well, when you asked me about sharing albums that I love, it wasn't necessarily what I'm listening to now, but I am absolutely guilty of listening to the same music over and over and over again for the last 40 years. So maybe it is all the same. I don't listen to a lot of new music, and it's not because I don't want to. It's just that I love my playlists and I love what I love. So I took the assignment pretty seriously, and I grabbed too much. So if I'm sharing too much, just just give me the sign. This is critical. This is 30 years ago. This came out. This is "Check Your Head" by the Beastie Boys. This is my original tape, although I don't think the tape is in there right now. But this is one of my favorite albums ever. Raising Hell, of course. By the way, Glenn Friedman, the photographer, took both of these pictures. And I think that should be noted, because a lot of my favorite things are my favorite things because he presented them the way he did, I guess. And I was really excited to know that in my documentary, I was outside of the building where these pictures were taken. And so I referenced Glenn a lot in my, oh, that's funny. I grabbed this. This is always a good one.
Nice.
Dream of the Blue Turtle.
Yeah, do you know who took that shot?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't know, but that was his first solo album, which seems like just yesterday, but that's what old people say. I think it was 1984 or 85. This is one that everybody should know, but
yes,
Special Beat Service by The Beat, or the English Beat. Actually, I have a couple of those. And What Is Beat?
So good.
Yeah. So I've actually I'm able to see them play live a bunch of times. Rest in peace, Ranking Roger.
Yeah.
U2, the Joshua Tree, and everything
now,
else.
when you are you going to head to the Joshua Tree and do some?
People have done it. They've mashed this up. They found, like, I don't know that there's any tree there anymore, but they know that the landscape is exactly the same, the background, and everybody knows where this shot was taken once you're out there. It's all Greek to me, but that's the tree I'm talking about. I don't think that's there anymore.
I think Anton Corbin did that shoot.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I don't know that. This one I picked up because this was very formative for me. As a young boy, an older relative of mine brought the Beatles into my life by giving me a tape. And it was this tape. Actually, he didn't give it to me at first. He was just playing it. And I was like, wow. And it was this compilation album, 67 to 70. And every song was a hit. And when he left me the tape. And it really does change your life. I wasn't introduced to the Beatles by my parents. It was somebody else outside of the family. And then it was very cool. This one is my lenticular copy. I don't know if that'll translate. This is probably my favorite album of all time.
Really?
This is It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back by Public Enemy. And it's lenticular, which means it'll look like three-dimensional if it catches the light right. So it's a special edition. This album is incredible. And I implore everyone to listen to it and with ears wide open. It changed my life. Whole bunch of Police albums. I love the Police.
I didn't know you were such a big Police fan. That's great.
Yeah, I love them. In fact, I have what seems to be, this is my favorite Police album, and people laugh at me for that because they think this is not their best album, but I like it. And it has to do with like where I was and who introduced it to me, all that kind of stuff. I'm not embarrassed about this either. This,
yay!
I love this album. I love Colin Hay. This album and Cargo. I actually have. This is the other thing I had. I had a bag, like many of us. I had a bag of tapes. The tapes that were in my car with me for a decade or more. That I play in my tape deck, and every year or so, Lisa would say, "Are you going to throw those away?" And I was like, "No, of course not. Why would I throw them away?" So she's like, "You should get rid of those." So instead, I started framing them, and I put them on my wall. So this is my Men at Work Cargo album.
Oh my God!
And it's flanked by AC/DC, Back in Black, which you can't even read the letters on there anymore. Licensed to Ill by the Beastie Boys, Joshua Tree. The English Beat. So a lot of the ones I already showed, but I'm hoping that you're seeing that I'm kind of all over the place. There's not any kind of real rhyme or reason. And this one I threw in there for you because I know you're a fan. I got this.
Oh yeah!
I got this one at a live show that they put on in Virginia. It's got like the white vinyl or something like that. I thought that was kind of snazzy.
Nice.
I really like them a lot. I think they're great. And then of course, LL Cool J, another Glenn Friedman photo outside of Andrew Jackson High School. And I just went and saw him get inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in October or November. I forget when it was. It was October 30th. It was my birthday. And he is the Audi 5000 that he's standing on was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Nice.
Which was really cool.
And speaking of 80s and this kind of stuff, did you hear the new announcements, the new inductees?
Yes. I'm disappointed that Eminem got in. Not that he got in, but that he got in before, I would think, either more deserving or as deserving hip hop acts that came way before him. A Tribe Called Quest is one that, in fact, that was the next one I was going to show you.
Oh yes.
Oh yeah. Low End Theory. Also, LL Cool J. The other thing that was cool about going to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is the actual radio that the cover was shot from was there. So I took a picture of that and I mashed up the album cover with my photo of the actual radio, which was really, it was really cool to see all that together.
Can you tell people where they can see these mashups?
It's just on Facebook mostly. We have a group I guess it's a private group, but anybody can be invited. I don't know if it's a closed group. I think you can search it. It's just Delta Bravo Urban Exploration, and it should be. I think it's just that easy to find. You just type that in, and you'll see people adding to it every day. Wherever they are in the world, they're like, "Hey, look what I saw," or "Look what I did," or "I finally visited this spot." And everyone has their own little bucket list of places that they want to go and visit. I have a couple. One of the things that there's been a few places I've never been able to find and that drive me crazy. And one of the ones that I really want to find, and I don't think I'm going to be able to because it might not exist anymore, is from the show The Wire. The Wire is a show that was shot in Baltimore, which is very close to where I grew up and where I went to school. And I love that show, and it's super sad, but it was an incredible show. There's an incredible scene, probably my favorite scene in the entire show, where Bunk Moreland, Wendell Pierce, is talking to Omar, played by Michael K. Williams, and they're sitting on a bench in front of this red sort of brick building, and it's this really powerful conversation between a police officer and an informant / criminal, and I can't find it. I don't know where that building is. And I've been down. I've done a whole bunch from The Wire. I've been down there many times, and I'm pretty sure I've done more mashups of The Wire than anybody has, because there's not a lot of people from this area that do Delta Bravo stuff. And I have access to it, so I can go down there pretty much any time. But I haven't been able to find that spot, and I think it might have been either raised or changed too much that I don't recognize it.
So if anyone's watching this,
Yeah,
and you have some ideas, obviously send them over to Andy's way. How about we bookend this with some music trivia?
all right, let's do it.
That sound good?
Absolutely.
All right. Heather, I think you had played this before. Mario, I can't remember. And if this is what's going to happen, Andy, I'm going to toss out a question to you. You just punch in the answer right in the little chat box. Do you see where you can do
I
that?
have to type it in?
Yes.
Okay.
Now,
where do I do that?
Should be right down below. You can message me privately if you want, so nobody sees your answer.
I can see the comments, but I don't see where I can enter anything.
Okay. Okay. Why don't you just do this? Do you see where it says private chat?
No.
It's over. Okay.
Yep.
You could just.
Oh, I can do that. Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Actually, it says chat with everyone in the studio, so maybe that'll work.
Okay. So each question has a certain point value, 1, 2, or 3. 1's easy, 2 medium, 3 hard. Kind of subjective. Who determines what's easy and hard here? Let's do a practice one, and I have a feeling you're going to be okay. Don't worry. Let's do soundtracks, shall we?
Okay.
Okay. I would actually consider this a 3. I think this is hard, but you might think it's easy. And people that are playing at home. Here we go. In the movie Coyote Ugly, what song, and if you need help, you can do that. What song by LeAnn Rimes featured on that soundtrack?
Oh, wow. All right.
What song by LeAnn Rimes was featured on that soundtrack I think it was kind of a hit movie, right?
I can kind of hear it, but I don't know the name of it. Let's see. Let me type something out, though. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah. All right, we have an answer. I believe is not the correct answer. The correct answer.
Is that a song by her, though? Or did I just invent that out of whole cloth?
I think that's Cher, or maybe that's Believe. I don't know. Help us out at home here. The answer is called Cannot or Can't Fight the Moonlight.
Oh, I never would have gotten that. Okay.
All right, here we go. Now this is for real, high stakes.
Oh, good, because that's too close to country music for my life. No country music questions. I'm allergic
Uh,
to it.
Heather gave a little image of it. She didn't know either. That's okay.
Oh, good. All right.
Let's go back to soundtracks. There is a great movie with Dudley Moore, Liza Minnelli, Arthur, 1982. Actually, 1981. It's an American comedy which featured a title song. Be careful on this one.
Mhm.
Featured a title song by which composer in 1928?
Oh, wow.
So
Which-
Arthur, an American comedy from 1981,
Mhm.
featured a title song by which composer in 1928? This is a legendary composer, just to let
Does
you
this
know.
mean that the song that had the same name in both 1928 and 1981?
I believe that's what they're talking about, yes.
So you're looking for the composer's name. I
Yes.
thought I knew everything about that movie.
Arthur.
I know that movie really well.
It's a great movie.
1928.
I'll give you a clue. This composer also became famous for Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
That doesn't help me.
Okay. Yeah, that's
I
that.
had typed out an answer, but I just changed it.
Okay.
1928. I'm going to go with it anyway because I don't know any other composers.
Irving Berlin. Oh, good guess. The answer was Burt Bacharach. Burt Bacharach.
1928. Burt Bacharach was a kid in 1928.
I'm just giving you what says on the card.
Moops. No, wait a second. 1928. I know who Burt Bacharach is. He was on that soundtrack in 1982.
Heather, we'll make him easier.
Yeah, that's tough. I know
We're
the
getting-
song.
All right, here we go. I think this is a two-pointer. Let's go back to movies. Name this movie that has the hit songs Cell Block Tango and All That Jazz. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing you don't mean All That Jazz by Stetsasonic, right?
We have an answer.
Which is a great song, by the way.
The answer, Chicago. Heather and Andrew got it. Well done, Chicago. That is correct. Ooh, good luck on this one. I think this is a two-pointer. Who sings the theme song for the movie Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves? Who sings the theme song for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves? Wow, you weren't messing around on that one. The answer, Bryan Adams. Bryan Adams. Let's go to 80s music. Right in your wheel.
Right? I got that one right, right?
You did. You did.
Cool. Need my credit.
All right. In 1981, the legendary band Mario, nicely done, the Specials had a big hit. What was the name of that hit song in 1981 by the Specials? It is not A Message to You, Rudy.
Oh, no.
Ghost Town is correct. Heather, you got that one. Ghost
Good
Town.
job. Good job.
Have you seen that video?
For Ghost Town? I don't think so.
Check it out. It's very 80s. All right, here we go. I don't know. This one's questionable. 2. Which singer? Sorry, we stepped out of the 80s for a sec. Which singer, songwriter, and producer plays Django in Django Unchained? Which singer, songwriter, and producer played Django in Django Unchained? All right, we have an answer. Potent Potables. It is Jamie Foxx. That is correct. Nicely done, Andy. What do you think? 2-pointer?
Yeah, I guess. I think you threw us off with your description of him as a singer and a songwriter and all that, because that's not how I think of him, but I guess it's true.
Let's go back to 80s. Good luck. Which of the following is a song by the band Dire Straits? Is it Jack and Diane, Romeo and Juliet, or Edith and Kingpin? Which of the following is a song by Dire Straits? Jack and Diane, Romeo and Juliet, or Edith and Kingpin? And then once you punch in the answer, I'm going to ask you a question related to that question. Oh, you have an answer. That's correct. Romeo and Juliet. Now, for a bonus question, who sang Jack and Diane?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite songs of all time.
Look at that smile. Who sang Jack and Diane? Uh-huh. John Cougar Mellencamp. Now for the second bonus question. Who sang Edith and Kingpin?
Is that a real song? I don't even know. I don't know.
Let's go rock music. Oh, you punched it in. We'll have to look that up. Icicle Works. Now, Ian McNabb of the Icicle Works is like all the rage on Facebook right now. He's touring constantly. He's
awesome.
funny. He's awesome.
Whisper to a Stream. That's a great song.
Let's do rock music. You ready? A couple more?
Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go. Which rock band famously requested no brown M&Ms? I actually didn't know this.
I have a little bit of a follow-up story about that, if I'm right.
Which rock band famously requested no brown M&Ms? Mario punches Van Halen into the chat box. Andy puts in Van Halen. That is correct. Well, what's the story?
So the story is they weren't doing it to be assholes. They were doing it to make sure that people were really reading their riders, or whatever they're called, when they had they wanted to make sure people were actually doing their due diligence and reading their requests as opposed to just, giving them a once over. So they didn't really mean it. They were just trying to make sure people were actually doing what they're supposed to do. It's less cool than them, them actually wanting all brown M&Ms.
Heather says, "What divas?" Ooh, I'm going to do this as a 3-pointer. Let's go back to 80s music. What is Rick Astley's middle name?
Oh, jeez.
Do you want choices?
Yeah.
What is Rick Astley's middle name? Is it John? Is it Robert? Or is it Paul?
I have a story about that too.
What's the story?
So when we were in London a couple of years ago, that
Yeah.
was one of my bucket list spots, was to go and find where Rick Astley sang that song, and like in the little tunnel. Never Gonna Give You Up, his video. And we found the spot. We had to go on a couple of different train stops to find it, but there it is. Like, you just walk up, and this is where he filmed his video. I got a lot of street cred for that.
The answer is Paul.
Nice.
Mario got it. And what did you punch in? You punched in Paul as well. I wonder if there's any. So is he from? Where is he from? Is he from Liverpool? Where is he from?
I think I don't know, England, but I'm not sure where in England. Yeah, this was in London.
Pop music. It's funny they call this pop music. Which of the following film directors is also the name of a song by Gorillaz?
Oh, okay.
God. Oh, that's such a great band. Do you like Gorillaz?
Me? Yeah, I do. I actually really like their graphics. I like their imagery that they include, and I have to say I haven't listened to a lot of them, but I know their popular mainstream songs.
They bring so many artists, a lot of hip hop artists, a lot of alternative. They brought in Peter Hook from New Order, from Robert Smith. Just incredible. The answer was Clint Eastwood. Clint Eastwood is correct. All right, we have 2 more right here on the docket. Let's go back to 80s music. I think this is a 2-pointer. And I think this gentleman was just inducted for some of his work into the Hall of Fame. Lionel Richie. No? Yeah? Okay. In which year did Lionel Richie release the hit song All Night Long? What year did he release the hit song All Night Long? Can we get a stumper here? Heather says these are the hardest questions ever. Heather, I don't think you know who we're dealing with. We're not just dealing with someone that just kind of knows trivia. He sleeps. Trivia is in his brain nonstop. So we had to make these a little challenging.
I haven't gotten all these right.
The answer was 1983. Mario got it. 1983. And was that the year? Heather says, well, I'm toast then. Was that the year MTV broke free? When
81.
Was it 81?
Mm-hmm. August of 81.
Blackwood, was she one of the originals?
Nina Blackwood, Martha Quinn, Alan Hunter, J.J. Jackson, and Mark Goodman.
Okay. Speaking of MTV, here's your next question. There is a famous writer who's written The Big Short, Moneyball. Michael Lewis is his name. And they actually live here in Berkeley.
I already know the answer.
No. Let me finish the question.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So Michael Lewis is married to a woman that used to be either a news reporter or a VJ.
He was a VJ. Yeah.
Name that woman. What are you, 20 steps ahead of me? My God. Oh my God. How in the world did you know that?
I don't know. I've read a lot of Michael Lewis's books.
Okay. Tragic story with them. So up near Tahoe, there's a town called Truckee. And as you're entering from on the highway, it could be pretty brutal. People are going, you're going down this huge hill, get a lot of speed. They lost their daughter last year.
Oh God.
Yeah, and I believe son-in-law. Horrible car accident right outside Tahoe.
Oh, that's terrible. Wow.
Yeah. So Michael Lewis right now, she's also a painter. You want her to check her work. He's doing his, I think he's doing a book tour right now. And I think he's also talking about grief and the grieving and all that stuff.
Did you divulge her name yet? Because I know I typed it, but I don't know if you've actually said it.
For those of you that were curious, who is that VJ? That would be Tabitha Soren. Andy did get it right. Last question, Andy. Good luck to you and everyone else. Thank you for participating in our pop culture trivia here. Do you want a 1, 2, or 3 question?
I guess 3. Ooh. For all the marbles.
For all the marbles. All right. Heather, you may be toast on this one. I may not. Okay. Heather says 0. Okay, here we go. This is a 3. Go ahead, get help from Siri, Google, whatever you need to use. I had no idea. So Mark Knopfler, lead singer of and guitarist for Dire Straits, did a soundtrack to oh my God, the 80s film Princess Bride. Had some great albums with Dire Straits. He also has a brother in Dire Straits. What is the name of his brother? And again, you can use any help you want.
Oh, well, that's easy then. I'll just look it up.
First one to punch this one in. How about that? What was the name of Mark Knopfler's brother in Dire Straits? That's funny about that band. I never, so when they're on, I don't turn them off, but I don't go deep into their work. And I don't even know why, because there's nothing, I like their work. It's just one of those bands. Well, we have an answer here. We do. Yes. Well played. The answer, David Knopfler. Andy, you kind of have the last word here. So tell us again before we wrap this up, where can people check you out in your adventures, your Delta Bravo, your artwork? Tell us a little quickly how they can reconnect with you after this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, most of my artwork is on katzart.com. My last name, KATZART.com. That's just my regular website, and really, it's not as up to date as it might be because I've done a lot of new things since then. But if you want to see my most recent stuff, a lot of things are on Instagram, and I'm at AJ Katz Art on Instagram. So AJKATZART on Instagram. And that's where I would really direct people to see my most up-to-date artwork, and also the Delta Bravo mashups. I post those all there. And then look out for, we're going to try to do a podcast too. I know this guy, Jimmy Ferrari, is putting together a podcast. We're going to call it Delta Bravo Mission Statements. The idea that we go on these missions to these different places to find things. And we're going to interview people, or he's going to interview people that are interested in whatever story that they come up with. If they went to a city and they found some things, and hopefully we can make it visual like this, where we can pull images up on the screen so people can see what we're doing. So yeah, I'm always trying to do either Delta Bravo things or new artwork. And yeah, give me a follow on Instagram. And I'm on Twitter too, but that one's, I don't know, that one's kind of flaming out a little bit. It's AJ Katz Art 42, so it's the same handle with a 42 at the end. So that's me.
42 as in a baseball player?
Yeah, it is. Jackie Robinson. I'm glad you caught that. That's great.
Heather, Mario, anyone else that joined us, thank you so much. We appreciate your participation, playing in this trivia game. Andrew, thank you for this opportunity. It's been a great pleasure speaking with you. And, you know, I will say, just kind of wrapping this all up, is that after learning more about your narratives, your journeys, your quests, and your love for pop culture, I think what really stands out to me about you that's very inspiring is your creativity and what you're able to do through these passions, through these bursts of inspirations that come to you at 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. And the depth that you go to really kind of be to the truth of these things, and what you said earlier, that feeling that it gives you. But yeah, the creativity is pretty remarkable.
Thank you. That's amazing. What a great compliment. I appreciate that.
Welcome. And I'm sure your students absorb all that creativity and what you're able to offer in the classroom. Keep doing what you're doing in the classroom. And yeah, I look forward to seeing more work of Delta Bravo and following you, obviously. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This was great. I appreciate it. It's fun.
Take care, everyone. And as always, keep listening to music and pop culture. It's always a good thing. Always. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks. All right. Bye.